Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here.
Welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm your host, Nathaniel. I'm so eager to have this wonderful conversation. Just met this beautiful presence and wonderful author, executive coach, speaker, facilitator. It's really such a pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Kevin Mays. We're really fortunate to have you here. We've been talking a lot about how we really need to come together more and collaborate. And just talking to you, I'm really thrilled to have such an amazing leadership builder here. You've brought together teams around the world. You have some really profound skills and simple practices I know you're going to bring to our audience to help them connect to emotional clarity. And just off the bat, I'd love you to introduce yourself and to tell us about your why and what brings you here today.
That's such a big question. First of all, Happy New Year. I'm so excited to just be here. And it's the thing I love about this time of year. It just reminds me of the notion from Zen Buddhism, beginner's mind. And it's a great reminder, a great time to
Mm.
start again, come back to this moment. So the questions even you ask are big questions. Who am I? What is my why? It's a great time to start again. Okay, come back to the present. What am I about? What am I doing? Because it's a continual iterative process, right? It's an evolution. And I think at a core level, letting go of my elevator speech, right? It's like for
Mm.
me, it's like my journey on earth is about helping others find their path and take steps on it. And
Beautiful.
over the course of my lifetime, I've migrated more and more towards people in the leadership space.
Mm.
And the reasoning behind that is because I recognize after working with high risk adolescents and working with people with chronic mental illness or doing family therapy, I'm a recovering psychologist, a self-awareness junkie, and a doctor of leadership. And I recognize that while everybody can benefit by having clarity of
Mm.
how they move through the world and the patterns that are driving them. People who run and lead organizations, their impact is far reaching and sweeping. And so I recognize that if I wanted to have the biggest impact, I needed to target people whose decision making had the biggest impact
Mm.
and help them ground in presence, in their own brilliant sanity, and to kind of cut through the layers of narrative and illusion that they've constructed for themselves over the course of their lifetime and to learn how to really access. In many ways, it's interesting. It's like a higher ethic,
Mm.
but it's also a higher level of self
Yeah.
that most never really learn how to. They are subservient to their own ego and their own drives that were passed down to them generation after generation. What if you could cut through that
Yeah.
and really step into that beginner's mind space and be whole and be powerful and be intentional and so sorry I don't have a snappy one-liner.
No, this
Well,
is, I love this depth, Kevin. It's so important to get back to the core, the root of who we really are, especially when we're in leadership positions. It's so essential because there's so many people that are relying. And I think there are so many leaders who are, you just get caught in the machine of it, like you're just used to the way things operate in your organization. You're used to the everyday A to B. And it's so easy to get lost in that. And then to also have to deal with the ego drive that has its own intentions and stuff. So I love that you started our New Year conversation with Zen Buddhism, the importance of starting anew. I was telling you a little bit before the show, our daughter Luciana, she's about to turn 2 on the 1st of February, which is Imbolc, the celebration of starting to welcome the new light into the world. And I think it's crazy that we have educational institutions that grown-ups have put it upon themselves to think that we need to teach children how to learn. Like, she is such a self-motivated learner. She has beginner mind all the time. She's constantly wanting to explore and she's curious. And I feel like if we could maintain that level of genius our whole life, we'd be in a whole different place as a species. So I love that you saw that, that important leverage place to help leaders return to that sense of wonder and learning and curiosity from a beginner mind. If I'm
It's
hearing you
interesting.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our educational system was usurped by the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
where, and you think about just the work of Karl Marx and Engels and all those folks who talk about leadership, I mean, not leadership, but our role as a worker.
Mm,
Our role as a worker. Now, where'd that come from? That's a
yeah.
social construct. Are we here
Yeah.
to work? Because if we are, then our education system is designing workers.
Yeah.
And it's actually, you look at our schools are based on the prison model,
Yeah.
and they are like little prisons, and you sit in your seat and you're a good student, and now so you can get a good job. I mean, that's the lie, right?
Yeah.
No, no. Now, what if you went to school to learn how to think creatively and critically and to really be your whole best self so you
Yeah.
could leave a lasting impact and be an entrepreneur or whatever it is, but own your existence on earth? And most don't, because we're brought into this narrative
Mhm.
that, well, I love it. I learned it. Go to work, go to school to get a good job. I'm GM country, right? Any job
Yeah.
worth its salt is a GM job. Everything else is a Mickey Mouse job, my dad told me. Yeah, well, yeah, it was the biggest company on earth.
Mm,
And I mean, it affected the entire ecosystem. The what am I looking for? My goodness, it's still a little early in the morning here.
no
Sorry about
worries,
that.
man.
The entire economic ecosystem of
Yeah.
Michigan was influenced by GM. So when that thing went belly up, which it did,
Yeah.
it impacted everything. That's part of my why too. Is like watching that happen. Like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. We're misguided here, and there's got to be a way to do it better
Yeah.
than watching the erosion in infrastructure that happens like in Flint, Michigan, where I grew up as a child,
Mhm.
to see how devastating that was. That's when this commitment got lit in me to recognize that
Mm.
every organization, every business, without exception, whether it's a manufacturing facility, whether it's a legal firm, whether it's a retail establishment, it's a human institution. It's for humans by humans to a human end. And I've worked with
Yeah.
so many organizations. I worked in a lot of banks. Oh, we're a financial institution. Wrong. You're a human institution.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
commodity happens to be this end result, which is, you produce financing, you produce automobiles. I don't care. But it's like somehow it got misplaced.
Yeah.
Our logic gets, and we are so in pursuit of that end result that we lose sight of the fact that everything is only to a human end.
Hmm.
There is no other game.
Yeah.
So it's that's really kind of lit a fire in me. That like I like what you talked about with your daughter, how she's a learner. Yeah, but oh, is she learning how to be a good employee?
She will not. Well, we plan like homeschool is our motto, and home is an acronym for heaven on Mother Earth. And what is heaven? Heaven is a state of consciousness of unconditional love where we recognize we're all interconnected and we can transcend the ego drive. Just like Buddha taught, that, talking about Buddhism, Buddha taught we can end suffering by recognizing it and then stepping on the Eightfold Path to transcend it. And so there is suffering in life, just like you're talking about in Flint, Michigan. We've seen all kinds of these upturns in society, this countless like back and forth. And I really feel like the root of it is the ego drive. And so our association is based on the principles that are taught in the Christ letters, and where he talks about how his true experience of life was one of true spiritual enlightenment in the desert. And he basically was shown like the reality of existence is very similar to what our quantum physics is showing, that nothing is solid. Everything is, a state of basically expressed mind and it's vibrating particles. And our mind is very important because it actually affects the molecular structure of things. So, when you're talking about, helping leadership teams and come back to their whole self, not only does that help, in my mind, help, realign people to their true self, their higher self, it
Mhm.
affects not only the people in the institution, but it also affects the buildings. It affects what their product is actually doing, how they're helping people. It affects the environments that they're building. And that's what he talks about in the letters. Like our consciousness is co-creative. So we're creating the weather patterns. We're, causing all the turmoil. And when we turn to love itself as the foundation of our being, well, we're now entering into more harmonious ways of being. And that's why we believe in community. So Luciana's life is going to be about being around community, being around community builders, being around entrepreneurs, being around creative people, being around, leadership coaches like yourself, Kevin, and being uplifted and choosing her own path. Like, we're not going to instruct her, but the root word of education is to educe. It means to bring out what is within. And imagine if our school systems taught that, like how to bring out what are your gifts? What do you love to do? Hey, we'll give you the supplies. Like that's what I envision for the future of education, man.
Isn't that profound? It's beautiful. And there's a shift that we're on the verge of. You can tell because the pendulum has swung too far.
Yeah,
And you're watching. I mean, I think we're watching history happen in the next, especially the next decade. A lot is going to happen as far as community building goes,
big
because
time.
that's really the roots of an effective democracy is a community. An educated community are the roots of an effective democracy, and not it's not a team sport. It's
Yeah.
about being able to think and recognize we are a community. And you
Mm,
can't demonize other people in your community if
yeah.
you're truly a community. That's the only way you're going to be successful. That's the only way it
Mm,
works. And I think we're going to see a swing back, a kind of more of a grassroots eruption that is absolutely going to happen, because otherwise it's a dead end path.
yeah. I love that, man. I think you have a gift of being so succinct and seeing bigger picture, and I can see that that's probably come from years of helping all these people in leadership positions who are always having like a bird's eye view. So you're having a bird's eye view of them. So I appreciate your gift in that. It's very articulate.
Thank
I do believe community is the root of everything, right?
you.
It's so
Mhm.
important.
Well, yes, and because that's communities our relationship with other. So right, I have a book coming out right now, Lead Yourself First.
Yes.
And right, and so that's it. It's about how do you upgrade your own leadership, and what does that mean to
Mm,
lead? What does it really mean to lead? Is leading about leading others, or is it about realizing that when you talked earlier, suffering, right? I think about the suffering of Flint, Michigan. Well, that there's a difference in my mind between pain and suffering, right?
mm,
One is just a physical sensation in our body, that's pain. Okay, we
yeah.
feel what we feel. The reality of the world is the reality of the world. But it becomes more about, in my mind, our suffering comes from our attachments
Yes.
to our self-concept, to our worldview. Whenever we're attached, it's like a stone in the river, right? We're not flowing with the current of things. And this is the thing that will drive me a little crazy with so many wisdom traditions. As soon as they write it down,
Yeah.
then they start to point to the written word, and they miss the whole magnitude of what's
Yes.
being said in the word. It's like everybody's sitting around pointing at the moon, looking at people's fingers,
Yeah.
and they're missing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the danger in when it's written down. Why I
Mhm,
love so much the wisdom tradition that transcends any tradition. It's like
mhm.
the real whether or not they're Carmelites, they're Christians, they're Buddhists, they're Muslims. Underneath it all, either there's truth or there's not.
Yeah.
And I believe there is.
Yeah.
And that means if there's truth, it's universal.
Yes.
Nobody has a market on it, nobody owns it, but it's discoverable. This
Hmm.
goes back full circle. When you lead yourself first, you can
Hmm.
find it. Now it's interesting. You talked about the science in the quantum mechanics,
Yeah.
right? So I love it. My meditation teacher telling the story of originally the good meditators learned that our body is made up of these arising and passing particles,
Hmm.
millions upon millions upon millions upon millions. And they actually came up with a number. And this is the enlightened meditation teacher who had said such good insight. They could experience and become aware of this flow of the arising and passing of these kalapas, they called them,
Yeah.
right? And so when the students then learned at UC Berkeley of this brilliant minded individual who was able to deduce the same number through scientific means, they all went to Berkeley and found this guy who had, by looking at the outside world, not the inside, but looking at the world externally, found the same number. And they found a guy who was in complete misery.
Hmm.
He wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So we don't find it, in my mind, when we're externally focused. But that's the hard thing. Based on our education system, we learn to just focus externally. And I don't think, spend enough time helping people learn to ground and be whole and understand how to become a master of their own consciousness.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where the gold is. That's the pivot point in I think the history of humanity, is when we start to understand that it's a game changer. And when we understand one more thing, sorry, I'm just on a
Don't be
tirade right
sorry, man. I love this. And
now.
I really love you, man. I think you bring such an important grounding message, especially into corporate environments. It's so important. Yeah. Yeah.
So when all, when we see the division that happens and we see people who are angry or frustrated or all of this stuff, recognize when we are aggressive to somebody else. This is why I think altruism is so important. It's
Mm,
not altruism for the other person's sake. It's altruism for our sake, because we can't show up egregiously to somebody else unless we're in an egregious state of mind. We're
mm,
creating that hell on earth.
mm.
We're creating heaven on earth. And it's not about, when we start blaming the outside world, we're creating hell. When we show up with love and community, we're creating heaven. And
Yeah.
that's our experience, not somebody
Yeah.
else's, ours.
Yeah.
That's the brilliance of it all. When we start to wake up as a species to that,
Yeah.
that's powerful. That
That's
is
what
absolutely
that's what we're all
powerful.
about, man. And I love how simple it is, right? Like just what you said, it's so simple. Are you showing up with love, or are you essentially like a lot of those feelings in doing my like to me, I'm a big meditator. I meditate every day. If I don't meditate, I feel like not myself. But in
Mhm.
looking at a lot of these emotions that come up, whether it's anger or frustration or even sadness and things like that, a lot of the time I feel like there is at some point an entanglement, a resistance to allowing that flow of love. And a lot of the times, for me, it's fear. It's the subtle fear that shows up as tensions in my body. And I feel like when I'm just recognizing that I have a greater relationship with this universal consciousness, you mentioned consciousness, and that it already has provided me all of my needs. It's given me fulfillment in so many ways, and I start developing my relationship with that as a source of my true self. I everything gets brighter. Everything I show up in life
Mhm.
with more joy, with more laughter, with more feeling beauty within myself, and able to reflect that beauty to others. And anyways, I don't know if I'm articulating myself that well this morning
Brilliant,
either,
brilliant.
but
Well, I love it. So for me, I teach conscious leadership.
yeah.
And that's leading yourself first. And there's 4 steps I've boiled it down to. And it starts, step one is presence,
Mm,
right? And so what I find when we think about fear is that fear comes from a lack of presence, right? Because now we lose the present moment and we step in, we become future focused. And then the what ifs start to happen. What
yeah.
if? And that's we start to generate these conditional emotions for ourselves based on this internal narrative that isn't present. It's based on a fantasy we're constructing. What
Mhm.
if this happens? What if I get laid off? What if? And then we create this fear, and then we operate out of a place of fear. Or conversely, we look back and spend too much time creating anger, creating a grudge, right?
Mhm.
Or regret,
Mhm.
or all these other frustrations, or all the stuff we carry
Yeah.
because of a lack of presence. We never learn how to just be right here, right now, because right here, right now, all the needs are met. Right here, right now is the only doorway to that kind of conscious awakeness that
Yeah.
we're referring to in this conversation. And it's not something that's going to happen in the future. And it's not something that happened in the past. It only happens right here, right now, where it doesn't happen at all. And everybody has the key. That's the brilliant thing.
Mm,
So when you talk about education, man, helping people, helping children find that key. But for me, man, it's a lifetime journey,
yeah.
right? Helping anywhere along the way, helping people. And again, I go back to, well, leaders now who lead organizations who make some pretty decisions that make some decisions they're convinced are good, but are devastating, and they don't see it and they don't
Yeah.
understand. And you know what I've seen so many leaders and founders do is, it's like the secret to their success got them here, and so they're so attached to doing it that way. They're good
Mm,
producers and performers that they get in their own way, and they get in the way of their organization's success because they keep doing the same thing. And they
mm,
don't recognize that being a producer is very different than being a leader.
mm.
And it's a very different skill set, and it's a very different It's like we have this neural wire that happens in the first, 3 years of our life. When we're 3 years old and our brain is forming a million neural connections a minute,
Yeah, it's incredible.
we're absorbing everything around us and learning who we are relative to our perception. Nobody has to tell us this. I have two kids, and they in so many ways have adopted birth order, and it plays itself out, right? The oldest behaves like an oldest, the youngest behaves like a youngest. When you read the textbook, Kevin Leeman's birth order book, love it. And when you read this, I'm like, oh my God, my kids are doing this. My wife's a psychologist. I'm a psychologist. What are we doing that's creating this? Well, guess what? I'm the youngest child. I played that role.
Mm.
And it works for me until it doesn't.
So true.
And knowing how to first, so I said there's 4 steps, right? Number 1 is just learning how to be present. Number 2 is to be aware. Can you be self-aware? Notice the emotional and the patterns, the mental, emotional, and physical patterns that play themselves out. And then number 3, so it's presence, awareness, and then intention. Okay, now how are you going to use your awareness of the patterns as they manifest in you? How are you going to interrupt those? And instead of reacting or being on robot autopilot, so I talk about, there's our caveman self when we're frustrated, or there's the robot, those patterns we learned. How are you going to interrupt that and really align with that higher self? Last step, vision. So sorry to go on a little
No, I think it's beautiful.
teaching, but for me, that's it. It's like the vision that goes back to that higher ethic I talked about, and it's got to be about us becoming a better version of ourselves and becoming whole.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that works.
And inclusive of everyone else's higher vision too, right? It has to be in harmony. And I feel like part of where I feel like there's a lot of maybe, you said everyone's pointing at the finger when people are pointing at the moon. Like, I think there's a lot of very affluent people who have achieved levels of success. And then people look at the outer manifestation of things like, having a private jet. And then all of a sudden that becomes the symbol. Like, can you imagine a world everyone has a private jet? Like, is that really, the ultimate happiness for everyone? Like, I feel like a lot of us are not looking at that inner game that needs to be in harmony with ourselves. So I'm curious because the ego can be such a subtle and
Tricky.
tricky thing, right? So when we're in these patterns, I mean, we all
Mhm.
experience this frustration. Someone,
Mhm.
triggers us, right? Which is often a
Right,
great
right.
opportunity. It's a growth opportunity. Be like, hey, this is still in your consciousness. How do you help people find that awareness and then move into intentionality to break those patterns in a way that's simple?
It's interesting because I think about awareness, right? For me, it's like an iceberg. I spent my life growing up learning how to be unaware.
Hmm.
Big boys don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about. Never let them see you sweat, right? You hear all this stuff. And so you learn to show up poised, like you got it all together. And we all walk around in this way, showing our game face alone
Hmm.
together. It's just a wild thing we've created as a society and as a
Isn't it?
species.
Yeah.
And for me, so this whole notion of emotion, I learned to be aware above the head and to be kind of a thoughtful guy and to learn
Hmm.
how to be quick and witted, quick-witted, what have you, be smart, but never to understand that there's this whole other thing happening beyond cognition. And so for me, the door opened when I've also spent a lot of time meditating. And when I began to recognize that without exception, every time emotion is in me, which is all the time, there's always emotion playing out. There's
Hmm.
something physiological happening in my body that if
Yeah.
I can learn to just turn my attention towards that, I can actually start to feel the sensations in my body, and there's nothing to figure out.
Yeah.
It's only learning to notice,
Yeah.
learning to notice. Oh, the tension, the heat, the pressure. There's always sensations in the body. And this is the brilliant thing for me is that our mind is always aware of our body, but not our conscious mind.
Mm.
It's our unconscious mind. For example, if your arm goes to sleep when you're sleeping, right? The tingle starts to happen. You'll roll over in your sleep without knowing you're doing it. Ah, your mind is aware. A bug bites you, you don't even notice, you slap it.
Mm.
Ah, we're not aware. So for me, the doorway is through our physical corporeal structure, right? That's the door because in bringing your awareness into your physical self, you start to expand your consciousness to become aware of the unaware. And it's in that the relationship between our mind and body is where all the patterns get stored. Just to notice. So the more you can, for me, it's like I love the meditation. When I notice my back starts to get sore or I have an itch and I want to scratch it, oh, there's that chain of reactivity that happens. And just by learning to not react, it starts to atrophy the mental muscle of reactivity.
Yeah.
And that's really the work, right? Is learning how to just notice and be aware and even understand that there is this reactivity that's continually happening, and we're not making intentional conscious choices. In fact, I'm convinced 99.9% of, I'd say so close to 100% of the world of humans do not make conscious intentional choices. We're making choices based on patterns that we've developed that are now deeply ingrained in the neural fabric of our brain. There's no free will, but free will is available. And that's, for me, the work. Like, how do you learn to just be aware? And so I go back to, it's interesting. It's so hard to see ourselves. This is my experience. It's so hard to see ourselves, but you can feel yourself.
Yeah.
I noticed at home, if I'm frustrated, it's the object of my frustration that I'm projecting onto that I think that's the problem. And to notice every time I have a narrative in my head about something I can't believe my wife is doing, and I'm
Yeah.
irritated, it has nothing to do with her, it has 100% everything to do with me and some attachment I have to an expectation. And I'm the one, in my brilliance, that I open my mouth and I say this thing that does not get me anywhere close to my vision of what I want in my relationship with my wife. Instead, it makes me right, makes her wrong. She becomes defensive. I become defensive. And then we get into a argument
Yeah.
because I'm right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I feel like self-mastery, the first step of it is really taking 100% responsibility for our consciousness. I mean, and it's a paradigm shift for a lot of us, right? Because there is this indoctrination we've all been socialized into, and it's played out in a lot of dramatic ways and all kinds of shows and things and families that we've been exposed to. But really, I feel like it's an identity shift from, this idea of like, I get to be right, and even that word right, and shifting more into responsibility. It's a shift from a strong identity to more stewardship. It's like, well, if we are all interconnected here, we have a responsibility to bring that alignment into it's like the physics where everything it's the and the quantum or the entrainment, right, when all the clocks are. And I in some of my deeper experiences, I've had this experience of the creative power of love. Like I did a 4-night fast that was led by an elder, and I never expect to have this experience. He talks about it a little bit in the letters, but I had this direct experience, and I think this is what you're pointing to too with all the leadership work you do. We have to have a direct experience ourselves to really comprehend what we're talking about. But for me, I had this direct experience of this creative power of love. Like we talk about love a lot. Like I love you, I love my children, I love my mom. But when you actually experience the power of it, it feels like you're going to dissolve in a way. Like it's so powerful. It literally is the energy that creates worlds. So like you talked about that Buddhist, you know, the master essentially who sees, this emanation of particles like coming and collapsing in and out of existence, and having that direct experience. He's also tethered to his true self compared to the scientist who is just in his identity mind, and having that ability to let love in. It sounds like all this big stuff, but really it's the simplest thing. And I feel when I had that experience, Kevin, it felt to me exactly how I felt like when I was an infant baby and I couldn't roll over. I didn't have the strength. It was like I don't even know how long I had to pull myself out of the lodge and lay in the sun, and I don't even know how long I was there, but I felt weakened like an infant baby, but just totally infused with love. And it was incredible. And it's hard to convey in words, but we all know it as when we're babies. So it's this
You know,
paradox.
it's so interesting. The language you're using, it's profound and powerful, and it's kind of almost taboo, in organizations to talk about love. So that's the interesting thing is how do we, part of the work is making it approachable. How do we help individuals find that without using language that turns them off? And that's been a big one for me because I love it. You're absolutely right. So there's this larger, I think of it in terms of like, the waves crash on the shore and the planets spin around the sun and the galaxies move in space. And there is something so profound and large that we are of.
Mm.
And when you can find that within, that is that love.
Yeah,
That
that's
is the love.
awesome.
My experience, when I was a kid, I drove a motorcycle across the country. I felt like life was passing me by. And I remember it's a long sordid tale. I was in an airplane. I was flying airplanes because I wanted to be a pilot. I was a
Nice.
pilot, but I was going to do that for a profession so I could travel because I love to travel. And I overcorrected in the Cessna, came out of a spin upside down and had to rock it all the way through. And I'm pulling the wheel back and I felt, the blood starts to drain out of your brain and your consciousness starts to shift and I'm going straight towards the ground at one point, pulling the wheel back and the never exceeds speed indicator. I'm in the red line going faster than this airplane should go. And the siren is screaming and I pull the wheel back, one bead of sweat going down my head, skate just above the trees. And I realized, this is not the career path for me. And I literally landed the airplane, sold my car, bought a motorcycle, and I took off. And on one of the adventures I went out west from Michigan and I just kept driving. I had a tent, had a backpack, and had a little bit of money, like $100, not much. And I got up to Washington State, up in the northwest corner of the US, and just followed the Pacific Coast Highway until I got down to right out of this town, Carmel, California, right outside of Monterey, south of San Francisco. At that point, I ran completely out of money. My motorcycle broke down. I didn't know anybody for 2,000 miles, right? So here I am completely talk about my identity and like, who am I now? If I am completely pulled out of the community that upholds and validates my self-concept, now I have none of that, no reference points, and here I am. Now, the great thing is I had a lot of training in my head about what it means to be a good boy, stoic, never need help, right? And I remember somebody stopped, and there I am on the side of the road, my little pup tent on the Pacific Coast, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. What on earth kind of mess I got myself into? And this woman stopped in her truck, and she asked if she could help me. And she was, said, "We'll figure out something. Let me give you a hand." And what's the first thing I say? "Oh no, I'm fine. I don't need help." Talk about training gone wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Resisting what is given, because in that moment, that's she showing up with love. There's love showing up, and I'm resisting it because no, my ego says, I'm going to figure this out. Lo and behold, an hour later, so she went from Big Sur up to Carmel to get her groceries, and on the way back, she had a little pickup truck she was driving. She had a guy on a motorcycle following her and some boards. They said, "Well, at least we'll get you into town." So we put the motorcycle in the back of the truck, take me into town. So I'm in Carmel, and we're unloading this motorcycle. And they had two boards, one that I had the motorcycle on, and the other I'm walking on from the back of the truck to the ground, right? And it's the three of us doing this. I'm holding the bike by the handlebars, and I'm kind of wheeling it back. Now, as the bike got shifted the momentum or the weight onto the ground, the truck lifted, and the board fell that I was standing on, not the one the bike was on, the one I was standing on, and I dropped, and it was amazing. I witnessed something in that moment I still can't explain or understand. It was like angels. It was like people came. I didn't know there's anybody around, and suddenly all these people descended towards me. There's people all around me, like at least 10 people came in that moment. Like, what just happened? And I never lost my balance, so I was able to wheel it back. But immediately, I was in that moment. There was the love right there. There was something happened in that moment when my identity was gone. There was nothing. There's no reference points that I could connect myself or attach to or be. All I could do was be open. And in that moment of receptivity, it's like there was some vibration or something that happened that cast out to the universe. When I saw people rushing towards the truck when they thought I was going to drop the motorcycle on myself, something can be shifted. And that was such a pivotal point. When you talk about love, it's funny now, decades later, when it was time for us to move from North Carolina to Michigan, part of me, that really, I think, changed how my brain was wired, that experience. That at one point we decided we are going to move to Michigan, pull out a map, decided where we wanted to move to, someplace we had never been, went back, quit my job, packed the truck. My wife stayed home with the 2 kids. We moved up here, unpacked, and I started a business. And I said, I know how this goes. There's one option, because with your thoughts, you create the world. Again, the first teaching of the Buddha. So watch your thinking. Recognize it's only up to you. It's up to you. And that goes back to the 100% accountability, responsibility, ownership for our own consciousness and for our own experience on earth. It can be tough sometimes because ignorance is bliss, right? Ignorance is bliss.
It seems that way sometimes, yeah.
Well, it does in our
When you're
mind.
binge watching Netflix or something.
Yeah, and when we know we're right,
yeah,
we know we're right, and everybody else is wrong. And you know what? And we get so ingrained and trained into these deeper. It's like we play out these patterns that aren't really helping us be better people. They're not helping us be happy. It's just us being right.
Yeah. Well, it's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story, Kevin. I really, I would love to crack this code with you because I too have struggled. Even when I mentioned something like the Christ letters, I'm not a religious person. But Christ appeared to me when I was in my early 20s in the forest, and it led me on this whole journey to finding indigenous wellness. I've sat in circles with some of the most beautiful elders and teachings and cultures, and I feel like they're, a lot of it, we have walls, we have beliefs about things. And I think as an artist too, I've noticed this with people when they're trying to create something, they say I think it's ingrained in our language, right? Especially English. What I've learned in comparison, English compared to a lot of other indigenous languages is very heavily noun based. And so we often focus on the objective thing. We say that's a tree, that's a beach, that's a sky. And in doing that, tend to separate ourselves, whereas a lot of other indigenous language frameworks are about relationship. And so I think love and this understanding is much more it's just inherently understood, because when you say something like, I'm going to go to the beach in Anishinaabe, and you would say something more akin to, I'm going to go be that environment. That mother is the body, our mother is the land, and we're with her. There's no separation. So it's a different frame, and I would love to crack the code of love to, especially to world teachers and organizational stewards and all these people, because it literally is the thing that's going to transform the world and bring us into the next stage of our species evolution. When we recognize that that's what connects us all. It's like the glue. I mean, literally, we're made from a seed and an egg through an act of love. All of us. We're so miraculous, yet we have normalized the miracle that we are. You talk about the body, like we're trillions of cells walking around, and we pretend it's normal, like
energy flow, right?
energy
Energy
flow.
flow. Yes.
Yeah.
So much of it to me comes back to, I think, in the West, it goes back to the Industrial Revolution, and I think of Descartes, this notion that I think, therefore I am, and the duality that came out of this Germanic philosophy and this Western philosophy, where we learned to torture nature's secrets out of her, right? And that's what the Western philosophers were saying. There was this deeply instilled or ingrained belief of the separation. And then we thought our job was to dominate Mother Nature, not recognizing that we are of that. And now, because of that, we are living completely out of harmony and creating destruction in the environment and thinking that somehow it's not going to bother us. No, we are of the world.
Yeah.
That's the beginning, middle, and end. So unless we're living right, so I love it. You go back to what you were talking about, the Eightfold Path. Like, well, how do we live in alignment in a way without it sounding woo-woo, right? Like, no, the cause of the environment is key because it is of us. We are of it. Yeah. And unless you start to, when you see people who have a livelihood working for Lockheed Martin, making long-range ballistic missiles, uh, there at some point it impacts, and I think it energetically, it makes it difficult for us to live and create heaven on earth
Mhm.
when we're involved in these livelihoods that are not aligned
Yeah.
with something, this love we're talking about.
Yeah. But like you reminded us at the beginning, right? It really starts with the self. I do believe that we can all choose to be creating heaven, and that comes from unconditional love, but it's not a passive path. It's not, it's like, when Buddhists talk about stopping a bully, you can do it with, anger, or you can do it with compassion. And I feel like the more that we can first practice self-love and self-compassion and really truly feel that within ourselves, and then have that high standard for ourselves, like to, and then to radiate that to others. I I can't remember her name. Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about a woman who was hidden away during the Rwanda genocide, and she was, I won't tell the whole story, but just the ending, it was so remarkable. She was stowed away in this hidden washroom for the, I don't know if it was 6 weeks or something, or longer than that, and she could hear all of her family being killed, and by neighbors. It was such a terrible, tragedy that humanity has experienced. And yet, um, she managed during that time, she had an English dictionary, she taught herself how to speak English, and she managed to somehow, by some miracle, forgive everyone truly, deeply, who were involved in this experience. So by the time that the world opened up to this, and the captives were released, the few surviving members, she was such in a state of embodied pure love for everyone that Wayne talks about her approaching the gate, and there were still those who were so indoctrinated with this belief of, we have to kill these impure ones, and I can't remember their names, and pardon me for that, but she was such in a state of love that the guards who were looking for the remaining survivors, they couldn't help but drop their arms in her presence. And I think when I talk about love, I feel like that is when enough of us agree to turn away from the violence and stuff. We're aware of it, but we're not contemplating it, and we're not resisting it. We're aware that the ones who are playing those roles are maybe even helping us awaken to a deeper level and capacity. Then I feel like we're onto something when we can really choose that for one another. It starts in ourselves, then it's in our families, then it's in our communities. And I really believe that we're gonna surpass a threshold in our world where we are all hearing the heartbeat of Mother Earth, because if anything, she's the one that's been in the most pain, right? She's endured the most. We're all of her children. We're from the land, and I feel like we're symbiotically related to her in ways that we don't even fully comprehend. So, so
What
let's.
demonstration of that I love that I see happening in the States. I was out in Colorado a couple of weeks, months ago now, I guess. It was the No Kings March, and it was people resisting against authoritarianism
Hmm,
in a way that was in no way anything but positive.
hmm.
They were just showing the love. They were showing up, they were laughing, they were dressed up, looking crazy. Everybody was honking. It was like a big party on the
That's
street.
beautiful.
And it wasn't, I mean, it was in relation to a perception that's being formed of some misdirection. But underneath it all, it's like this recognition that as humans, underneath it all, if we peel back the layers, we are all the same as that woman who was
Yeah,
stowed away in the washroom.
yeah.
We all have that if we can allow ourselves to. And it's tough when you look at like Israel and Palestine after 2,000 years are still stuck in the same pattern, deeply ingrained pattern. And so it's hard. It's so sneaky, that our ego,
Hmm.
we find validation in our culture compounds the attachment in our ego. We know we're right, we're good, they're evil, they're bad. And that's us creating hell on earth. And wouldn't it be beautiful as people can wake up, and they are around the world? The more, though, we can, that tide rises, I think we're going to see
Yeah,
changing times on
yeah.
planet.
I agree. And I'm curious, Kevin, like, what have you noticed in terms of the transformations that you've helped some of these leaders go with, and how does that affect the organizations and their experience, the leaders' experience of their role as well and their purpose?
It is fantastic. That's what keeps me going, right? When I work with organizations, because I want to see the organization be successful, which means profitable. But, when I worked in banking for a long time, at one point in my life, I made the decision, you can change the system from inside or outside. How are you going to do it? Because I did a lot of social intervention training, and I would protest, what have you. And I realized, well, you can push against or get inside and help pull the levers from
Mm,
within. I worked with a business recently that it was amazing to see how, as the leader ascended and learned to move from being a doer to an actual leader of people,
mm,
starting with leading himself first. When he understood that his own consciousness, that everything that was happening in the organization was a reflection of his state of mind. And when he was confused, when he was irritated, when he was uh, frustrated, that is what landed in the organization. We had a confused and frustrated organization. As he learned to polish his own lens
mm.
and to develop, again, the grounding in that deeper ethic and to wake up, it's amazing. Then the organization started to shift and change to the extent that now I start working with, so my work is not only individual, but work with a lot of group dynamics and understanding how teams function.
Okay.
Now we have, in a very short period of time, like within 6 to 8 months, the organization has gone from chaos to the best days it's ever had.
That's
And that
amazing.
means, so for me, it organizationally has to come back to results, right? Otherwise, there is no business in this world
Yeah.
if it's not profitable, highly profitable. But more than anything, there's a community. People want to feel a part of something. And imagine if we could make our workplaces that place where people feel a part of, not where they go in and punch the clock and leave, but there's a community where we're producing something larger.
Hmm.
And so there's got to be a real balance, right? Because yes, everything we're talking about is great. Love this larger thing, but in and of itself does not keep the wheels of our society going. So how do you find that balance between having that and bringing that into your organization in a way that leaves people feeling like an insider, like they're important, like they're communicated with, like they're recognized, they're witnessed, they're part of something that is meaningful. And when
Yeah.
people feel that, then you start to see people showing up. And it's amazing. They become the best version of themselves at work, and then they take that home.
Yeah.
That's the fantastic thing.
Yeah.
I ran a 5-day executive development program for 10 years. And in this program, I would have 10 executives from around the country, and we'd work together and get to a point where on day 3, I would take them through a holotropic breathwork process where their consciousness would shift, their limbic system would take over, of what they know would shut down, and they would enter into this much broader space within themselves that they never knew existed. And I watched hardened executives sometimes bawling
Mm,
on the floor, seeing Jesus, seeing their
mhm.
grandfathers, having conversations with people who were gone, stuff that is beyond logic.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I'd get the fruit basket from the spouse saying, I'm not sure what happened. He went to leadership camp and he came back and he's different. And thank you. Because
Yeah.
what the work is to be able to peel back. If we can peel back all of our attachments and peel back our ego and truly show up in a way that is, we want to be helpful with our fellow man and with other people that we're at work with. We call it work. It's so industrialized. No, it's a group of people that we're going to spend 8 hours, a third of our life with. What if you could show up in a way that really was guard down, that really was just open and receptive and helpful and aligned and, where we brought the love? That creates high performance organizations. There is no way around it. The hard thing is we have a system that will reject some of that language, right? So that's the hard thing. It's like, how do I corporate speak that into a way that they open to it, that they become open? So for me, I think it's all about results, but results come from behavior and behavior
Mhm.
comes from beliefs.
Yeah.
So now we have a formula to lead yourself first. Open your own door,
Mm.
right? Look at yourself. become self-aware, and become a better version of yourself, become embodied with these billions of sensations that arise and pass, and recognize that you can own this energetic flow, right? You can recognize that you become, in a deep and profound way, the captain of your own ship. But it requires you to completely take flawless ownership, accountability, and responsibility for the life you live and the experience you have, and to recognize it's yours. It's your perception. And it's interesting. I've always tried to figure out how to articulate this. It's like there's this one mass with all these little points of consciousness that all come back to the one thing, but they're all individual. It's like the individual in the whole at the same time. And we become so attached to our perspective because we think it's the right perspective. When we let go of that, we realize there's this universal perspective that we're
Yeah.
all just little windows into this larger house that is so big that it defies any kind of logical understanding. It's a deeper place of presence, and that's where it all starts with for me. How do you come back to just being present?
Yeah, I love that, man. And you have a very interesting mind and way of looking at things. And I would reflect back to you what you described in coming back full circle is community, right? Like even that
Mhm,
word and the etymology of
mhm,
community, it's communicating our unity. And the word individual always was interesting to me because we're individuations of a greater consciousness that is
mhm,
interconnected and everywhere. Every master has told us this in their own unique ways. Some teach it like math and some teach it like English, and we all have this connective, and it's interesting too watching the iterative evolution of science go from very much a dogmatic materialism to now there's a lot of the language that we're using in especially emerging sciences that is much more bridging spirituality and sciences. Like one of the doctors that I've learned from is Dr. Sue Morter, and she talks about how we can build biophotonic density through breath work and literally build more consciousness in the body. She's just releasing another work called the Anatomy of Awakening, and I feel like she would be someone interesting that you would connect with as well.
mhm,
But
mhm,
also, what you said is so much. This is to me. I call it. This just came to me in spending enough time in circles. Is I call it the law of the circle. And I see us all in a big circle of consciousness, and we all have a unique view of whatever the truth is in the center, that universal truth that you talked about at the beginning of the conversation. We all see it from a slightly different perspective. And for me, the law of the circle is the more that we can listen truly to one another with open minds, open hearts. If you can listen to someone on the far end of that circle and really hear their perspective, we start gaining more awareness as a whole of that greater truth that we're all part of. And all of our relationships are also transformed by this deep listening. To me, that's the simplest way that I like to describe meditation. Like you
mhm,
talked about being aware of the body sensations and all that arising and falling, and aware of the subtle nature of the unconscious mind to judge either through craving or aversion of those micro sensations. This is essentially what Buddha taught, right?
mhm,
That's all listening. It's just subtler and subtler levels of listening. And I feel like it's funny. It's like there's so many windows of paradox. So you talk about, helping leadership drive results through changing behavior, changing beliefs, and these really transformative experiences they have from a simple thing like breath activation and being held in a safe container to go through this process. It's it's interesting the dynamics that we've created in society. We've made it so complicated, right? And yet it comes down to
mhm.
like breathing, listening, loving one another. And so I really appreciate, I got to say, Kevin, I really appreciate who you are in these spaces. I feel like it's such a gift to have someone who's illuminated like yourself being around leaders like this because they need this kind of connection. And I do think all these little seeds, all these little fruit baskets that you're gathering around the world make huge impacts to creating the new earth we all, I think, on a soul level long to be a part of. So thank you. And
Yeah, thank you.
what is your vision for this work that's unfolding? Because obviously you're going through your evolution in your work, and you're probably before the call you were talking about, writing out your vision for 2026. Where do you see yourself growing into, and what is your higher vision?
It's being a channel for all of this, right? And doing the best I can. When I moved back, kind of rewinding the story, but to when I landed in Michigan, I knew if I had one thing in my head and in my heart, if I can just be helpful. And I said, if I can just be helpful, everything's going to work out. And I've spent my life studying and researching and understanding and meditating and trying to be on a path of wisdom and to bring that to organizations and entrepreneurs and executives. So selfishly, I am a youngest child who has attention needs. I'm always trying to get met. So what's that look like for me? Yeah, I see the authors in the bookstore who are the best sellers, and I got a book coming out, and it's going to be on the shelf right among theirs. That's the vision, right? And more of an international recognition because there's my own ego drive. But the neat thing is, it's serving because the
Mm,
more I get that visibility, that means that people are getting on the path because that's all I'm about is helping people find the path within themselves and take steps on it to become and recognize
yeah.
that the path isn't your path. There is no your. It's a path of wisdom.
Yeah.
And every step on that path is letting go of the your. And it's just larger. It's the same dance between the individual and the community, right? And
Mhm.
I like what you're saying, communication and unity. Yes, it's that it's that dance between the two. And so ultimately, wouldn't I love to be able to continually help be part of the evolution that is unfolding and to help businesses recognize it's good for business.
Yeah.
It's good for business when you are awake, when you're aware, when you're I don't like self-managed, but I think it's about being intentional.
Hmm.
Intentional means that you don't let emotion dictate how you show up. And that goes back to presence. When
Yeah.
you're out of the present, you're reacting often based on emotion, based on perception that you're attached to. When you're in the present, you let go of the narrative and then you open the door for
Hmm.
beautiful things to happen. So whatever I can do to help create this beautiful world and to help recognize that we can have material abundance.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other.
Right.
It can be both, but when you're strictly in pursuit of material abundance and lose sight of the fact that it must be in pursuit of something larger, it can't be material abundance for material abundance sake, or
Hmm.
else you're miserable and you have all the stuff you want, and the stuff is not the path to happiness.
Yeah.
It's an inside
Can
job.
can you talk about that? Because one thing I noticed in your bio was talking a lot about emotional clarity, and I feel like that's an interesting term. And when I think of what you're saying, just for context, like a lot of us are trained, when we have an uncomfortable emotion to go basically seek something to either numb it or to distract us from
Mhm.
it. And so we don't really expand a lot of our emotional capacity. So if we're
Mhm.
siphoning anger or sadness, we're also siphoning joy. We don't realize it. So then we'll say, well, I need to have the swimming pool or I need to have the Ferrari to feel joy. And then you get it, but you're still siphoning this stuff, so you don't get it. But I really like that term emotional clarity. Can you expand
Yeah,
on that?
yeah. Well, so for me, it all starts to when we wrote the script, right? We come into the world, feral little humans, wide open energy, and right away start getting messaging.
Mhm.
And we take this wide open energy and learn to constrain it. And we learn what this okay zone is. Oh, if I do this, if I'm the responsible, hardworking, pleasing, uh, happy-go-lucky, whatever your role, whatever the identity is you create, and it becomes this secret to our success, but it's this constraint that when we're outside of it, it's not okay. And so that becomes our ego identity, and we're pushed back into just perpetuating this role. When we're in it, it's comfortable. And that's the thing we crave, right?
Mhm.
And when we're out of it, it's uncomfortable and we avert the discomfort. But it all comes back to with our thoughts, we create the world. And when things agree with our thought process, even if we're not aware of it, it creates that positive emotion.
Mhm.
The validation, see, I'm okay. Most people live their lives in such a conditional way that way. And they don't have any awareness. They're just craving that positive emotion. And for me, the real power is being able to just be present with and recognize the actual emotion, the actual sensation, because that's
Yeah.
all emotion is, right? I mean, I spent a decade trying to figure out what is emotion. Well, you know what emotion is? It's a sensation in your body. It's a feeling. That's simple. Learn to
Mhm.
be aware of it and know that then there'll often be a thought anchored to it.
Mhm.
And often it's the other way around. It's the thought when we're attached to it spawns the emotion,
Mhm.
and then it compounds the thought. I'm frustrated because he's an idiot because he cut me off in traffic. And then, I mean, I love it. I was driving the other day and I'm just driving as I drive, right? Maybe I drive too fast sometimes. I like it. I have a joy for life. That's how I justify it.
Yep.
Guy pulls up to me next to me in the car with and he's got his finger, giving me the middle finger uh, at the stoplight. And I'm like, huh, I wonder if I did something, right? He's now created this narrative
Mhm.
where I'm the egregious one.
Mhm.
He's he's in hell. He's frustrated, irritated, and made me out to be the demon.
Yep.
I don't even know what I did, right? So I
Yep.
start honking. I'm like, hey, wave, and trying to, but he wouldn't look at me. He just kept giving me the finger the whole time. And I'm just like, this is phenomenal how we do this. But to recognize that moment, in his perception, his cognitive framework, invalidated some belief he was attached to and created the emotion, and the emotion drove the behavior.
Mhm.
In Buddhism, there's the five skandhas. I love the skandhas, right? We have the cognition, recognition. So now he's aware of the situation, and the way I behaved activated some deeper a belief and then an emotion anchored to that. I'm the idiot, and he was justified in being. I mean, I love that the behavior, right? So somehow his behavior was justified based on what he perceived my behavior being. It's just a weird thing, but now he's
Mhm.
giving me the finger. Is that the guy he is? Goes around giving people the finger? Probably if he stepped outside of himself, he would realize that's not who I want to be,
Yep. Yep.
right? But he's letting his emotion dictate
Mhm.
how he shows up. And that's what most people do without awareness. Our emotion dictates our behavior, and our emotion comes out of our attachment to our ideas. Imagine if you let go of your attachment and you don't have expectations,
Yep.
then you're just present with what is, with regardless of how it feels, right?
Mhm.
And that's the work. In my mind, it's cutting that reactivity of the craving and the aversion. And what if you're just present with what is? And
Yeah.
it's not positive or negative. When we label it, then it's a positive.
Mhm.
And we go towards that thing, or we label it negative and we go away from that thing. What if it was just a sensation in your body and it
Yeah.
wasn't positive or negative? It just was your experience. Because what happens, it's the mind is sneaky, and now we're kind of trying to revert back to
Mhm.
perpetuating that safe zone that we learned when we were 3 years old.
Yeah.
Now we have I have the founder of an organization that runs a $500 million company. He keeps perpetuating the same framework he developed when he was 5 years old,
Yeah.
and he doesn't realize he's shooting himself in the foot every day. He's undermining his business because his comfort zone is to be back in getting stuff done, telling people what to do, command and control, and he's undermining his business completely because he
Mhm.
brought the industry leaders and now he's telling them what to do, and they're jumping ship saying, why do you have me here if you're just going to tell me what to do?
Yeah.
Let me be brilliant. So it's, for me, it's just a fantastic, going back to the original question. I'm trying to think, what was the original question? How do we keep from being driven by our emotion as part of
Yeah.
it?
And
Right.
emotional clarity, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like having what that is. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see how you've outlined like a real path to power, but I can also see the challenge in it, Kevin, especially with working with high level, leaders who have, they've gone on a whole journey and there's an identity wrapped in there to all of a sudden have to feel, to be vulnerable in their authenticity and recognizing that this pattern comes back to like my 5-year-old self. And like not a lot of grown-ups want to admit that, there's a little child in there still who is,
They
not
don't want
having
to
their needs
believe it
met.
at all. But
Yeah.
but here's the thing, which I love when you talk about modern science. There's nothing to believe. Modern science, just the way we understand how our brain is wired, You don't have to believe anything. Look at science.
Yeah.
Oh, we come into the world, we have hardware, we have a brain, but we don't have a lot of software. And your job is to create the software. And now
Mhm.
during the course of your life, you take this wild, feral, open energy, create this software that says, here's my operating system, my internal operating system. And now here you are 40 years old, still playing out 50, 60, 70 years old, still operating on that internal system you downloaded when you were 3, 5, 7, 10 years old.
Mhm.
My work is to help people upgrade their leadership.
Yeah.
And that's the real work, to recognize you're operating on DOS.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, you're a brilliant founder in your organization, and look how you're keeping yourself from getting what you want.
Yeah.
Look how you're undermining the organization. Look how you're not elevating others. It's a totally different skill set, totally, and you have to let go of and
Mhm.
really get out of. This is the thing I love. Leadership is not, in my mind, leadership is the most spiritual path there is,
Mm.
because it starts with leading yourself, understanding this constraint, and and it requires you to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You cannot be a good leader and be comfortable,
Yeah.
because you have to let go of everything that you've learned during the course of your lifetime. It's not, that's the old playbook. The internal operating system that you downloaded is the thing that got you here, and
Mm.
it will not get you where you want to go.
Yeah, beautifully said. And so relevant to the times we're in, where so many people are, in fear of, emergent technologies and what's going to happen. Like
Mhm.
all of this stuff is so applicable. And I love the title of your book. You lead yourself first, because it applies to everyone, really. And if we want to live in that
Mhm.
harmonious world where we're all going to have to some degree, take a leadership role in leading ourselves. And I feel like good leaders are also leading from the front. They're servant leaders, but they're not taking from anyone. They're really uplifting that leadership quality in everyone else around them, right? Like you talk about building the brilliance up that you hire, right?
That's the brilliance. Back to the education system you talked about as well. Are we teaching kids to just manipulate the external world around them? Or are
Yeah.
we teaching them to find their own gifts and to become
Mhm.
the best version of themselves? Very different, very different, and a huge impact for the world we live in. Now, what if leaders could absolutely recognize their job is not to tell people what to do? Their
Mhm.
job is not to get stuff done. Their job is not to roll up their sleeves and jump in. Now, that doesn't mean they don't do that
Mhm.
sometimes,
Mhm.
but I think of it in terms of your position on the mountain, right? As a leader, you must be at the top of the mountain with the longest vision, the 360 view of the organization. I see too many leaders who jump down the mountain into operations and start to get stuff done. And in
Mhm.
doing so, they undermine the entire system they're trying to create.
Yeah.
But they get so much validation out of getting stuff done.
Right.
And the hard thing is, how do you get validation if you're not doing the thing that you initially programmed into yourself, right? I got validation when I made mom and dad laugh. So
Mhm.
I became the pleaser.
Yeah.
I become the guy who always had a joke. I recognize if I worked hard, I got validation.
Mhm.
So now all these validation pathways get framed into the or ingrained into the cognitive framework of my brain, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
neural connections actually supporting my thought process. This is for me where the power is, when you change your thinking,
Mhm.
which you have conscious control to. If you put the narrative down, when you change that over time, your brain actually begins to rewire.
Mhm.
If you don't do it with intention, I can guarantee you will keep doing the same thing you've always done, and you will be a victim. You will think the world is the problem. And in doing that, you're not taking the ownership, accountability, or responsibility that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That's why it's so difficult, though, because if you're going to take ownership, accountability, and responsibility, I love it, the OAR, right? You are in the boat, you have the oar, you are rowing the boat, you decide where it's going to go.
Mm.
And sometimes you have to take a hard, difficult look at yourself and recognize it's not somebody else, it's you.
Yeah.
You get to write the script. You're the pilot of the ship. Where do you want it to go? It's a new year. It's a time to turn the page, turn the chapter, and decide, who are you becoming? The question you started with when we started this conversation, who am I becoming? Yeah, that's the question. I've spent the morning and over the holidays writing. And you know what I love to do is grab a big sheet of flip chart with colored markers and start to write, what's happening? Who am I becoming this year? And what am I creating this year?
Yeah.
In a way that's not just left brain linear, black and white, right? I want a whole brain way of understanding it. So I love color because that's more right hemispheric. I love shapes. And to bring my entire being forth in this adventure, because what I know to be true too, as Napoleon Hill said, right? If you can achieve it, if you can, what was it saying? If you believe it, you can achieve it. Now there's something else in there. It all comes back to with our thoughts, we create the world. It's the
Yeah.
Buddhism saying, making sure for me that I have clarity of what I want. And that even comes to financial goals. Write a number down.
Yeah.
Continually ingrain it in your brain, because as you rewire your the neural fabric, I love that reticular activating system, right? Then we start to see the world differently. Then we start to attract the world differently. And this isn't anything except neuroscience.
Yeah.
When I decided I wanted to buy a new Jeep Wrangler, I wanted a red one. I'm like, I'm going to get a new Jeep Wrangler. Guess what I started seeing everywhere?
Red Jeep
It just
hangings.
showed up everywhere. Not just red, but every color. I started noticing. How did that happen? Where were they before? Suddenly they're everywhere. Now Jeep, I love it. Jeep owners, they all wave at each other, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they notice each other. That's all brain programming that's happening. And if you program and tell yourself the person, and you have clarity of who that person is that you're becoming, to even write it down, draw it out, keep coming back to it, retrain your brain. Otherwise, you're going to default to the training you gave yourself when you were 3 years old. So for me, who are we becoming?
It's a great question. It's very important, right? And I think it's a daily question, and there's so much wisdom in it. It reminds me of the term affirmations. Like everyone talks about affirmations, but people can be challenged with that, using that as an identity rewiring tool, because it can take a long time to entrain a new thought. But an affirmative question, like who am I becoming, or how did I become so wealthy, or how did I become so successful in my red Wrangler Jeep? All of a sudden, like you're saying, the RAS system starts looking for the solutions, because that's what the mind does, right? It looks for, if you ask questions, it's going to look for the answer. If you say, why am I so dumb? It's going to show you the answer. But if you ask, like, how did I become so blessed in life that I have such a loving family, and I have so much abundance and wealth and such a beautiful community? Well, hey, your mind's going to start finding examples of how you already have that, right? And I mean, it's no secret anymore, but starting from that physiological place, can you talk a little bit about evoking emotion? Because I think that comes with clarifying emotion too. Like, we do have a feeling of what's in the body, but there are ways that we can change the state of our body too, like going for a walk, even doing breath work, like you talk about holotrophic breathing. We can actually do certain emotional states that help us maybe align more of that identity shift that you're referring to.
Well, it's interesting because the interplay between our thinking and our feeling and our physiology, right? So attachment to an idea. I have this cognitive framework. I see something that invalidates my self-concept at a deep core level. My brain then releases cortisol, and I have the stress hormone. How do we get rid of the stress hormone in that moment? Again, I'm going to say it again ad nauseum. First of all, presence and awareness. Let's notice that it's happening. And there's so many different ways to do it, different breathing techniques. I've seen, the box breathing is a great one. I see a lot of people do it, where you maybe inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold for 4 counts. So you're continually inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. And what science is saying that does is it aligns our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So it kind of it just balances us out, I'll say.
Makes sense.
For me, and then the holotropic breath work is great. It's like an expunging. What I've witnessed people do is like grab a hold of this deep rooted pattern and pull it out in a matter of an hour. I've watched people, I've worked 10 years, worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and watched them make major changes in their self-concept, in their kind of rewire their cognitive framework very quickly by simply it's wild because it's not a logical process. It's just a breathing. All you're doing is breathing, 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 and stuff starts to come up. You just keep breathing. Stuff comes up, you keep breathing. And when it's all said and done, it's like they pulled all the stuff out and let it go. And suddenly I always thought of it like this process was like the Marines, right? You tear them down and build them back up. It was day 3, would have people breathing this way. And then we had a couple of days to help them then have some tools to be able to really create with intention. Part of what happens during that breathing, the holotropic breathwork process, which there's nothing magic about this, is Stan Grof designed it when hallucinogens became illegal, right back in the States in the 60s. He started studying shamanic traditions around the world and understanding how do we shift consciousness in a way that gives people access to these greater parts of who they are. And I know I've done it many times myself, and again, led hundreds and hundreds of people down that process. To watch how it absolutely does, it does some deep work that's not logical in our unconscious mind. It can release a lot of those patterns in a way that leaves us with a different foundation, changes some of the belief structure that we've been attached to, and recognize that's the hard thing. We become so attached to our beliefs that we don't even. I like something you said earlier. You're not really religious, and for me, that's powerful. Doesn't mean you're not spiritual.
Yeah.
Very different things. One is an attachment to a dogma.
Right.
One is a deep kind of ability to keep your seat and be present in any situation. Now, back to your question. For me, the most profound thing I do on a regular basis is simply walking in nature. That's simple.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like being back in the womb. That is what humanity is of.
Yeah.
There is the purity of nature. It's disheartening too to see our progress when I see forests get mowed down for the latest model.
That hurts me a lot too. I've seen it happen, paths I've walked just around here, the spirit name that carries me that I was given from one of my grandmothers is Undakin. Aki means land in Anishinaabe Moan, and it means the keeper of the land, essentially, but being a steward. And I've grown my awareness, especially after one of the most significant things I think that that he talks about in the letters is that he would have talked about the mother. He only talked about the father to reintroduce this idea that God is not some being outside of us, but it is the indwelling creative parenting impulses within us. And in the letters, he expands on that too and talk about the mother, how the father, you could understand all the activity, like that particles moving in and out, like that's the consciousness that's drawn from the universal of movement, of will. In the yin yang, it's the yang, but the yin is really, it's the mother's consciousness of the loving intelligence that is the nurturance. It's the one. It's the consciousness that creates form and nurtures all the goals, just like a mother nurtures the embryo until it becomes a baby, and then also protects that child. So its physical expression is the magnetic drive. And I feel like we're entering into this new paradigm shift, Kevin, where, I ask electricians this all the time. I said, there's a lot of electricians out there, but there's no magneticians, and I feel like we're returning to this whole where we're seeing women and men need to come together in a divine partnership. So I'm curious, have you seen more like women leaders in roles? Because I'd imagine it's a different, and he talks about this in the letters too, like a lot of women, they take on leadership roles, but then they try to embody this very like domineering or dominating kind of presence when really I feel like we need a return of that like real grounded, grandmotherly, real divinely driven feminine leadership as well. Like those two kinds of leaderships are important, I feel, in our world to find that balance.
Well, it goes back in my mind, back to what you talked about with the yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine. And I feel like the Industrial Revolution and the mastery of the external reality is so yang focused. It's so external. It's so, and so like our whole industry is based around this model that you have to, in order to fit in, you have to show up a certain way. You have to basically wear the pantsuit not a dress, right? What's
Yeah.
that mean? As far as identity goes, you have to be a man.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that shifting more and more. It's interesting to me too, because I feel like it goes back to that individual, we believe in the States that there's strong individual freedom.
Mhm.
But the cost of the individual freedom is the social freedom. We don't
Mhm.
have the ability. I mean, everybody could take a gun into a bank if everybody took responsibility,
Mhm.
but they don't. So, it's like we're not safe to walk down the street in certain cities at 3 o'clock in the morning. In Japan, you go down any street, any city, any hour, and you're safe. But you don't have the same kind of individual freedom.
Mm.
You have the communal freedom. And
Mhm.
in this way, I feel like there's like a yin quality on in a lot of the East and a yang
Okay.
quality in the West, this outrushing force. But the interesting thing is, to me, it seems like the attraction is now kind of we're attracted. You see a lot more interest in understanding grounded spirituality, understanding meditation, understanding presence and
Mhm.
consciousness. In the West, in the East, you see, who's the biggest manufacturer? China,
Mhm.
right? Is now they're trying to adopt the Western way. The West is trying to adopt the Eastern way.
Mhm.
It's just really interesting to see this evolution
Yeah.
and to see how it plays out. So I'm very curious. Back to your question, uh, I have one really profound example of a woman that I worked with who she was the CEO of a company, and she did it with heart in such a profound and powerful way that people wanted to be part of that organization. It didn't mean she didn't hold people accountable,
Mhm.
but she did it in a way that was encompassing, and it did bring that kind of maternal nurturing quality that is missing in so many organizations, right? And especially I work in a lot of manufacturing facilities that are guys, right? In a
Mm.
foundry, you don't get any more manly than a foundry. Right? Big
Yeah.
swinging pots of metal, hot and dirty, and people swearing at each other. And there's not. Yeah, I mean, it is the creation, that molten metal. It's just phenomenal to see how the two fit together. So I've seen examples of the feminine in leadership roles, and I feel like that's the balance. As we achieve that more and more, there is this belief that, and it's safe, it's easy to be combative as a leader, to say, this is the way it's going to be, my way or the highway, get out. But what you're not doing then is creating the community. What
Mhm.
you're not doing is creating this engaged environment that leaves everybody better off, because that's the secret to creating a high performance organization. How do you then, but what it requires individuals do, whether the male or female, is to access that within themselves,
Yeah.
to be whole within themselves, right? And that's something that people don't know how to do. And there's a lot of fear around it right now with
Mhm.
gender identity and all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So much fear
Well, it's
around
that
people
pendulum,
pulling
right?
back.
And it's a further extension of identity, right? Because when you get to the whole self, you realize, well, all the identities you've really been holding on to are not who you ever really were. So there's,
Well, I love it. I'm fascinated by clothing, men's clothing and women's clothing. And so there's a role we learn to play in our society. And if I put on a certain article of clothing, it's going to put me into a different gender bucket, even though I've changed nothing except wore something that socially is accepted for one gender to wear. It's just the strangest thing how
Mhm.
we become attached to that
Mhm.
then, and
Mhm.
then afraid of it. If somebody steps outside and wears this other article of clothing that is associated with the other gender, what? We're just like, we are, talk about externally attached to our perceptions.
Yeah.
Talk about a pathway that is not a pathway of wisdom. Talk about a rabbit trail that we're going the wrong direction. Who
Yeah.
cares what people, right? Come back, sharpen your own saw,
Yeah.
become the best version of yourself. Don't, and that, so this is really people then reacting to the perception of what, and their narrative, right? Back to the five skandhas, we have perception or cognition, recognition, sensation, reaction, right? There's the first one is like all of consciousness in our body, but then it's that simple cognition. Okay, we have a window. Recognition. We can compare it to our mental Rolodex, it creates a sensation, which is the emotion. So now I see a guy wearing a dress that is wrong in my head, right? And it creates some sort of sensation in my body. And then I react out of the sensation in my body, not at all to the thing I'm perceiving. And that's where people don't understand. They're not reacting to the world around them. They're reacting to their perception of the
Yeah.
world. And that is why people are miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
What,
Very well
imagine
said.
all of this. What if you could just be happier?
Yeah. And who cares what someone's wearing? Like, like
Right.
really, as long as to me, it's like there is that underlying universal truth to all of this. And when you realize that you don't have to argue for it, it just is, and you can simply enjoy and be that master of your own consciousness and love unconditionally. I feel like every master who has achieved that highest level has come to this place of true unconditional unselfish love. And I don't mean that like it's encompassing of the true self, but it's this place of just living and let live. And as long as there's no harm being done to anyone, what is the cost to the polarization that we see in the society? And I think this is a big theme for a lot of leaders, because I've noticed in a lot of institutions there is more impositions, and there's a lot of tokenism that can happen working in Indigenous wellness. Like, you know, I get phone calls all the time. Hey, we need an elder and a dancer to come to our event and do a land acknowledgement and do a dance. And can they do it for free? And it's like, why? Why do you want this happening? It's like, well, we're supposed to now. We're supposed to get land acknowledgements. We're supposed to, to honor Indigenous people. Well, it's like, well, but where's the heart? Where's the intentionality that you're talking about? And I just feel like what you're talking about is really just raising our consciousness to realize like there is a higher vision. There is that top of the mountain. And when you said that top of the mountain with the ore analogy, it made me think of some of the players that faced a lot of unpopularity, because when you're a leader in an organization heading into unknown times, like we all are right now with, emergent technologies, there's an awakening of our species happening. It can be unpopular, I feel, at first to say we're heading in this direction, and maybe not everyone in the organization sees it because they're not at the top of the mountain. So it requires sometimes for a leader to take an unpopular decision to go into an unknown framework or an unknown direction. And so I can see how it's natural for someone to want to go and fall. Well, I'm just going to go into the trenches and help with the paperwork, or I'm just going to go and but to stay on the top of that mountain, it requires a lot of courage, right? So can you talk about courage a little bit, Kevin? Because I feel like this is such an important topic.
Yeah. Well, it's so right. And it requires not only courage, but the ability to be uncomfortable. And maybe that's what courage is. It's to stay aligned with the vision, regardless of how it feels.
Mm, mm,
Because at the top of the mountain, your job as an executive or an entrepreneur is to help people understand what the top of the mountain, what is the vision, where are we going, and to champion that and to communicate that and to create a culture that feels whole and aligned with it,
mhm,
not to get stuff done. And it's a very different thing when your whole life has been validated by you getting stuff done.
mhm,
And suddenly now you have to shift all of that. Again, I go
mhm,
back to this is why leadership is the most spiritual path you can be on, because you must not throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you must let go of everything you've learned
mm.
that is right,
Yeah.
because you'll never elevate others. That's the courage, right? It's about, I love it. I see bumper stickers, no fear. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. No, it's about embracing.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
waking up. Oh, I have fear.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make a conscious decision, because no fear is not no fear. It is no awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the ignorance is
That's the
bliss.
ignorance,
Oh, I'm
man.
blissful. I have no fear.
Yeah.
Now you're lying to yourself. Fear
Yeah.
is a very natural experience.
Yeah.
What's it feel like? Leadership, true courage is being able to step out of the constraint, out of the comfort zone,
Yeah.
to have the unpopular opinion, to not get validation, to be bold and step forward
Hmm.
into in your own wisdom, right? In a
Yeah.
way that says, here's where we're going, and that a way that lifts others up. And courage for a lot of leaders, I find too, it's difficult for them because they start to doubt their
Mm,
own value. If
mm,
everybody else is doing the work that
mm.
I've done to get here, what's that say about who I am?
Yeah.
What's that say about my value?
Mm,
Who am I? Right? And they don't
mm,
even know or think, they just know that it's uncomfortable
mm.
because what got them here is their ability to roll up their sleeves and get stuff done. They have a natural inclination to see the vision. I worked with one guy, brilliant visionary. He had a 20-year vision for his organization.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he didn't translate it very well. And one point he told me, Kevin, he said, I work with a bunch of idiots. I
Mm.
said, huh, Nelson, why do you work with a bunch of idiots? Why'd you hire a bunch of idiots?
Good question.
You hired them. Why'd you hire them? He said, this is what he said. They weren't idiots when I hired them. I said, oh, okay, maybe there's something here. So is it possible that they're reacting to the perception they have of you and they're not showing up better? They're showing up worse.
Mm.
Oh, what's your role in this? How can you change yourself? This is why leading yourself first is so elemental because
Yeah.
you cannot change other people.
Yeah.
But when you change other people, it's when you change yourself,
Yeah.
it's like there's an alloy that happens, right?
Mm.
If you show up and you and I show up in a conversation, we both bring our element and it forms a different element.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to change the element you show up with, but if I change the element I show up with, the alloy shifts. It's a totally
Mhm.
different metal. Now you have brass.
Okay.
Huh.
Beautiful analogy.
So, yeah, right. So you
Mm.
must change yourself. And when you do, then you'll start to notice other people will begin to change. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I've seen again and again and again in organizations that
Yeah.
blows me away and fills my heart every time I see it.
I love it, man. Yeah, I love you saying that. It remind me of a few things. This acronym came to me a few years ago. I know it was from a divinely inspired place, and my cognition works a lot through acronyms, but it's for fear, it's feel everything and remember. And that remembrance, we've been talking about this whole show. And I want to give you this too. An Irish medicine woman gave me this. We were talking about courage. It was at a sweat lodge, actually. She was there, and she said, Nathaniel, in Irish, the word courage, it literally translates to the rage of the heart. And I've thought about that a lot. Even in the same root word in French, "cœur" is as heart, right? The rage of the heart. Because it's not an anger rage. It's this rage of like, I gotta do this thing. It's like, this is my purpose. And so I love you succinctly said that, that there's so much to these roles of leadership that evokes these deeper spiritual characteristics that we must step through, and we must, let go of the stuff that no longer serves us. Just like a butterfly discards its previous life to step into transformation. So you're such a beautiful soul, Dr. Kevin Mays. I really appreciate you. You got a book coming up. Can you let our audience know about the book that's coming up?
Absolutely. So, yeah, the book is Lead Yourself First, and it really is based on my experience over decades of working with leaders, working with myself. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a self-awareness junkie and a recovering psychologist, doctor of leadership, pull it all together and tried to make something meaningful. And so much of the work isn't my work, but the work I've seen from what I've learned from other great leaders along the
Hmm.
way, kind of put it
Beautiful.
all together into a playbook. Uh, if you simply go to upgradeyourleadership.com, that's
Perfect.
simple. Upgradeyourleadership.com. The book is not out today, but by the I don't know when this launches, but it'll be out very soon. It's all written. I'm very excited about it. Upgradeyourleadership.com, and really help people develop presence, awareness, intention, vision, to have a pathway, a conscious leadership pathway. Oh, have some tools to evolve purposefully, intentionally, to become the best version of yourself. Not just empty words,
Mm.
but real strategies and a skill set to be able to evolve on purpose. When you
So,
change yourself, you change the world. That's
it's
it.
it's
The
so
only way.
interesting. I was going to ask you if you had a megaphone and you could talk to the whole world and say everything. I think you just said it when you change yourself.
But that's it.
It's such a pleasure having you on the show, Kevin. I really appreciate who you are. I already at the beginning of the show we talked a little bit about our school community. You're certainly welcome to join us on school. I would encourage you, as well as our other listeners, to check out school, because a lot of the things we've talked about, taking ownership for yourself, building real community, I find it's happening on school. I feel like we're in this paradigm shift where so many people are so just disenfranchised with, wall ads and just a lot of AI nonsense. People are looking for authenticity, just human, real experiences. And so we're growing our community, and we're going to be doing in real life events as well coming up in the new year. And I feel like there's this resurgence of community. So I'm looking forward to reading your book and learning how to apply some of these deeper skills, because we're learning about entrepreneurship too, and we're going to be building our team and all these things. I feel like if we can pass these things on to our children as well, to help them save some of these pains of suffering that we don't need to suffer anymore. So I really love how you've really brought together in such a harmonious way deep spirituality, the inner quest and leadership that we have available to all of us, as well as transforming organizations through helping other leaders. It's just a beautiful path that you're on, Dr. Kevin. Would you like to say anything else to our audience before we invite our daughter?
Well, to you, hats off. You're so kind. And this is a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I go back. Yeah. And you have such a kindness and a kind heart. So thank you. This is a great conversation.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate
For
that.
everyone listening, to recognize that the world is much larger than your logic or your ideas about it.
Mhm.
And the one thing I think everyone can do is really to stop thinking about it so much sometimes and just be present, and to recognize that you are the captain of the ship.
Mm.
You get to determine how this plays out. You get 100-year gift, as far as I know, right? I mean, I don't know what happens next, but I know right now we're here and we get to decide how this plays out. If we want, and it's really about choice and freedom of choice. So find that within yourself, learn to peel back the layers and live life on your terms, to be great, to be in the love, as you were saying, Nathaniel.
So
You'll find
appreciate that.
it's a wonderful journey. It's a wonderful journey. So thank you.
Such a beautiful reminder. Thank you for being who you are. Presence is so undervalued, and you've reminded us in so many ways how important it is to value our presence and to show up with that whole integrity and leadership focus. So thank you so much, Dr. Kevin Mays, and to all of our listeners. We really appreciate all of you, and happy 2026. Blessings to all of your loved ones and those you touch. And make sure to check out Dr. Kevin Mays' website as well, and upcoming book. So we're happy to help promote that as best we can, Kevin. All right, blessings to you and your family. And I'm just going to invite our daughter up to say thanks for watching, everyone.
The moon is right, the spirit's up. We're here tonight, and let's simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. The party's on, the feeling's here.
We wish you a
Have a new year. Have a new year.
Happy New Year! Can you say Merry Christmas, everybody?
Yeah.
Say it.
Have a new bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.
I love you.
We wish you a Merry Christmas.